everyone. Thank you so much for joining this class today on Introductory Pastel. I'm going to cover a lot of material in a very short period, so when you're working on this from home, feel free to just turn off the video, do whatever we're doing, and then come back to it, or just to sort of integrate what I'm saying, because there's a lot. All right, so let's begin. So in your kit, there's lots of fun things. You have an introductory set of dry pastels that should look something like this. Mine is used and worn, of course. Yours will be brand new. And you have some cotton balls for blending, a few Q-tips, and some examples of paper. So there are many kinds of pastel paper. What you have is a good basic paper that is in your kit today. You will probably notice if you go to an art store and you want to buy some of your own pastel paper that they do provide or offer lots of different color papers with beautiful grounds, and some of them feel like sandpaper. That's so that the pastel will adhere very strongly. Today you have just a beautiful smooth paper, also several colors such as this. And so what you can do with these colored papers is you can choose your ground, and the background is called the ground. But today we're going to start just with your basic beige. I believe you have 3 pieces of beige and then a couple pieces of colors that you're going to experiment on your own. So let me just give you a quick sort of a historical idea of what pastel is. Pastel is the oldest form of art in the world, because when you think about the cave drawings, what were they? They were pure pigment applied on to a surface. Pure pigment in those days, in the Neanderthal days, was charcoal, ochre sand, maybe a mineral found in a stone somewhere. So it's the purest, it's the grandfather of all art, because it is the purest, and the most important thing, there is nothing between the artist and the surface, or what's called a support. There is no brush, there's no medium, there's no oil, there's nothing. Only your hand. So it's the most hands-on, wonderful thing in art because it's pure painting. So pastel has always enjoyed a great notoriety, and it really came into its own in the 18th century when pastel portraiture was extremely popular. And you can look in some of the great painters, particularly French portraiture pastel. Just Google that and you will see so many exquisite examples of what pastel can do. Now, pastel is very different from oil or acrylic in that you can't mix the colors together. The only way that you can get a mixed color, shall we say, is to layer, or to use these certain techniques today that I'm going to teach you, that are laid out in this little worksheet that is included in your kit. So in order to do any kind of pastel work, we have to have these basics. So we're going to go through those nice and calmly today. You're going to do them along with me, and then you will have a basic toolkit to do any kind of pastel work in the future. Now, many people are very focused on drawing. Drawing is important, but drawing is not everything. And what I mean by that is that I do not want to see, if you were here in front of me, I would say I do not want to see people drawing lines and filling in the lines. Okay? So this is going to be more about form than about line. So let's keep that in mind. That's an extremely important concept. You can go very realist with pastel. You can. But try and avoid the making a line and coloring it in. That's the first step. Okay? I thought that we would begin with some of these beautiful techniques. And we can do that right now. So choose a neutral page, so kind of a beige, I think. In your kit, you should have a nice beige. And let's begin. All right, so I just want to give a short introduction also on the types of pastels that are available in the marketplace. You have there's hard, medium, and soft, and they all give different results. So what you have today, what is in your kit, is medium quality. If you go to a good shop and you see Sennelier, this is very soft, and this is going to give a nice background. If you need to cover a lot of space, you're going to use a soft. And then there's the hard, the very hard, and these are Lefranc, Lefranc. They make this beautiful, very hard, and that's where you can get some nice, strong lines if you want to use lines, okay? So that's important. And then there's this fabulous form of pastel, which is also French, and it is also by Sennelier, and they make them, I'm just going to wipe it off. This is another technique. If you will find that your pastels will get dirty, as you can see from my working box here. One way to keep those clean is just rub them on a paper towel. It's very simple. But what's great about these Sennelier large formed pastels is that they're such pure pigment. They crumble easily, but look at the spread you can get on something like that. Any good art store will have these. These are a little bit expensive, however. Okay. So, and then of course I always keep a nice piece of willow charcoal in my box if I want to do anything. Dark, whatever. Okay. Also signing. So that's also should be something that you probably will have, all right? So the other thing is the mess. It is very messy. I choose not to work with gloves. You may want to choose to work with gloves. That's completely okay. But there are two basics in pastels, and both of them are used with the hand. So your tool is your hand. As I said earlier, the first pastel was only the hand with the pigment on the surface. And this is the same thing. So it's going to be you, the hand, working on your piece of paper. So there are two tools on your hand that are indispensable for pastel. One is your thumb. So you can go in and blend beautifully with your thumb. And the other one, let's get a little more surface on here. The other one is this part of your hand. Okay, you want to put it in with that part of your hand. What this does is this part of your hand grinds the pigment into the paper, and so it's going to be quite steady, and the surface is going to be quite solid after you've done that. So those are your two tools. Now you're thinking to yourself, well, what am I going to do? My hands are so dirty. And then I start touching something else and it gets polluted with this color. Keep some wipes on your table. Pull one up, just do that. I wear a little smock around my waist, or I can just do that, wipe it off. And look, clean hand. I'm ready to begin. Let's begin with your worksheet. We're going to start with the first one, blending. Very easy. So what I want you to do on the blending, on this worksheet, is I would like for you to choose two complementary colors. Complementary colors are always opposite on the color wheel. So green and red, yellow and violet, blue and orange. Those are your complementaries. So I'm going to choose the green and the red. All right, this is important that you choose the complementary color for the reasons that you will see. Try and get them as close to pure complement as you can. First one is, just want you to make a circle. Choose one of the colors, not both. Just make a circle with the edge of your pastel. Make a circle. And then blend it. Now, you can blend it with either your hand tool, your thumb tool, or the cotton ball provided, but that's going to lift up some of the pigment, which is not ideal. This is why I prefer the hand, okay? Or this. Now, you're going to see the weave of the paper is going to show up. If you don't really like that, add more. Press. Right, so make a nice circle, and we've blended it. That's the first one on your worksheet. Number 2, scumbling. Okay, so make the next circle. You can choose the other color or stay with the same color you started with. It's up to you. Scumbling. And then what you can do, if you have some hairspray at home, I happen to have brought the fixative, but Aquanet hairspray, cheap and widely available, also works beautifully. And just spray it. And then I'm just going to let that kind of evaporate for a minute. And then over that is scumbling. So you take the edge of your pastel and pull it over. And you see how that just touches the top of the surface. Okay, so that's what scumbling is. Scumbling. Now, what I'd like for you to observe very carefully is that in all of these spheres that we're going to do, in order to keep them grounded visually, you're going to have to put a base on those. So choose your complementary color, and then from the center, just pull out the base a little bit. This is a visual trick that is going to give your drawing some weight. And then you're going to define the bottom of the form on the edge of the pastel. And now we have a ball that looks like it's sitting on something rather than floating in midair. So that is scumbling. Now, the next step is feathering, as you can see. So on one side is going to be one color, and on the other side, another color. So I'm going to start right side red, why not? So feathering, I'm just going to pull like a feather. I'm just going to pull out on the edge. I'm going to pull it down this way. I'm going to do it in a diagonal. And then take your complementary color and go the opposite way, slightly overlapping in the center, so that you're going to see what the complementary colors are going to do when they're mixed, right? They're going to look like this. They're going to look darker in the center and purer, of course, on the exterior. So that's feathering. Now, you can have fun with this. You know, you can decide, oh, I like that, but I want to see what it's going to look like in the center if I just blend a little bit with the edge of my little finger. Or I want to see what this looks like on the edge if I want to pull the color out. What does that look? Look at that. That's beautiful, all right? So as you're going through these exercises, you're going to experiment. You're not going to do everything literally. You're going to experiment as we're going. Because what we're trying to do right now is to understand what this medium can do. And as you will see, it can do a lot. So in order for you to understand that, you have to experiment as you're going along. All right, cross hatching and hatching. Now this is really fun. I'm going to change my complementary color because I want to follow more of the drawing for you so you can see that. All right, so let's try and make it in a sphere. So cross hatching is just exactly what it sounds like. Lines, hatches, hatching. And then exactly the opposite way. So once again, as you can see, I can't mix colors with pastel. Like if I had oil paint in front of me, I would take a little bit of this, take a little bit of that, mix it all together, and voila. But because I can't do that, the only way I can get interesting color and mixed color is by layering the colors one on top of another. All right, so that's important. Now, also carry on beyond your sphere in one color, and you can see what that looks like, right? All right, let's try and pull. Let's do the base as we talked about earlier. So you're just going to pull that out, and there's your base. Now, if you want to darken your base, you use your complementary color. So you pull it in, and you should get a nice deep neutral gray, because complementary colors together equal neutral gray. Okay, and you can blend it a little bit with your hands if you want. But, okay, so now we have this base, or we could have done it like this. Okay, let's do another cross hatch. And then let's pull out the base also in cross hatch. But you're going to make it a little darker because, of course, the shadow underneath your sphere is always going to be darker than on top of the sphere, right? Because if you're seeing a light source coming in from the top, it's going to be very light on top. And as the sphere turns, of course, there's a shadow down here. It's stronger. So you're going to put your more cross hatching here, more cross hatching here. So cross hatching is kind of like, think of X's, right? You can even make that gesture with your hand, X. And then you can define the form with a little bit of light. And now we can definitely see I'm adding a little bit more light at the top, because of course the light source is here. And now it's starting to look like a three-dimensional object. All right, so that's cross-hatching. Now let's go complementary colors for shade, sort of a combination of what we've done in the first two spheres. So let's try that again. Start with your darker color of the two. Okay, so you've got some dust there, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to blow that off so it doesn't pollute my next sphere. All right, so let's just turn it around, take it on the side, pull it into a circle. That's very easy. Don't try and draw a circle, please. Use the side of your pastel, and you will be surprised it will make a rather perfect circle. Perfect enough. If you really want to go perfect, you can get something from your kitchen and just put it on there and draw it, but I don't feel that that's necessary. Perfection is not always the right solution and can very often kill creativity. So just be relaxed about it. If my circle is not perfect, it doesn't make any difference at all. All right, so now I'm going to pull my complementary color. Where am I going to pull my complementary color? I want the area that's darkest. If my light's coming from here, the darker area is going to be at the bottom on this side. I hope you can all see that. So I'm going to make my complement there, put it over, and that's going to immediately darken that area, right? And it's already a little bit lighter on the top. Now I can blend. You see, I really prefer blending with the hand. This is where you may want to use your Q-tip or your cotton ball, but get into it and get dirty, because that's the way it's going to look good. All right, so this you're already seeing that it's starting to turn, and that's what we want it to do. Put our base there. So if our light's coming from here, the shadow's not going to go out here. The shadow's going to go here, right? I'm going to amplify that minimal area where the form meets the surface, right there. Now, if I really want to amplify that, I go into my lovely box here. And let's just take a neutral brown. And I really pull that line. Okay, so that's and I can also go back in there and make that even darker. If I want to amplify that shadow moving out, I can also add it here. And there we have a perfect ball, okay? So that's what we can do. That's complementary colors for shade. Now, the next thing I want you to do is to experiment with line thickness. This is also in the path of understanding what your pastels can do. So what I would like you to do is to hold your pastel in just a normal way. And then you're going to, you see all the different angles that are now on the top of the pastel? You're going to try and use each one of those angles and see what that angle produces. All right, so we have one line here, and then a thicker one. I'm providing medium pressure. Okay, then what that does is it makes all this kind of prismatic forms at the top. Try the point of one of those. Look what that does. It gives us a nice line. Okay, now I want you to take the entire side. Do not hesitate for a minute to break your pastel. They are made to break. And every single piece, you see, even this piece here, see this piece? I've even saved that because just to show you that every piece is useful. And so, you know, I get down to a white, is this color? That's the way it's supposed to be. So if you want a stronger edge, break your pastel. You're allowed to do that. Okay, and so now try it fine, lighter, lightest. Okay, so what I'd like you to do here, you're going to turn off the video now for you. I'd like for you to experiment with different pressures of the pastel as you're applying it to the paper and different widths to see what it can do, finishing with, of course, the side. You can see what the side looks like, very light and very dark. All right, so this exercise is super important because you have a very clear indication of what's possible with this wonderful medium. So we're very clear that this exercise you're probably going to do without the video, right? You're going to do the drawing thickness, the line thickness. Then I want you to side stroke and do various thicknesses there, starting bold, going as light as you can. So that means hard pressure going to soft pressure. Okay, so experiment with that. Even take a different piece of paper, try different colors, see what different colors do. All right, following that, we're going to see what white and black do to colors. So the first one, I want you to color, choose one of your complementary. So in this case, I think I'm going to choose blue because I love blue. And I'm going to start with white. Here's white. This is a better white. Okay, so if you have one of these kind of sophisticated pastels that are surrounded by paper, you have to peel that off. And what's good about that is where you stop the peel is where it will break, right? See that? Perfect. Okay, so I'm going to take this nice Sennelier white and just make, doesn't have to be a circle, but I'll make it a circle anyway. You can make it a square. Anyway, it's kind of it's a very warm white, lovely. you probably have a very cold white in your kit. My kit has been used so much I don't have it anymore, but I'm sure you have it. Okay, now, so I've got that dust. What do we do with dust? Blow it off like that. All right, now I'm going to take my color. I want to see what color it looks like on top of white. So why don't you just side stroke it, the upper part. So I want you to see what that looks like. Give a nice medium-sized pressure. The reason why there's so much dust on this is because I used a Sennelier soft pastel. And as you can see, the softer the pastel, the more dust. Harder pastel, hardly any dust. So the top semi-sphere is going to be dark, and we can blend it a little bit. I'm using my fingers. You may use your Q-tips, cotton balls. Now on the bottom of that same sphere, I'm just going to do the same thing, but very light, so that you can see what color looks like on top of white. All right, that's just a... Once again, this is so that you can see what pastels are capable of doing, because in every drawing, every piece of artwork you're going to make with pastels, if you don't have these tools, you're not using the medium to its full capacity. And that's a shame, because there's so much you can do with pastel, the grandfather of all art. So now we're going to do the same thing with black. I want you to start with black. So you see this tiny piece of pastel? It doesn't matter. It's still just as good as a brand new stick. All right, here's black. I'm going to make it into a circle. Don't worry if your circle is not perfect. All right, and now I'm going to do the same thing with that. Top half, nice pressure. See, this is where you can get these really rich, deep colors, like say you're drawing a boat and you want to do the hull. That's that really deep bluish. You can use a nice black background, or you can use a deep ultramarine color. Here's a lighter, but you can see when you're starting with black, it's immediately predominantly black, dark. Whereas when you're starting with white, it's immediately the lighter color. So when you're working with the lights in your composition, you may want to start with white, not always, but if you want something sort of muted and nice and in the light part of the chromatic scale, you will start with white. Otherwise, you can start with black. So that's what that shows us. Now, so I just kind of flip this off. If this dust starts to bother me, I can spray it a little bit with your Aquanet hairspray. When you're spraying, you want to keep about, I would say about, how many inches is that? I don't know, 6 inches maybe above, and spray, never spray close, please. Spray up, and be sure and spray in an aerated area. It can be kind of toxic, this spray. All right, so we are on to stippling. Now I want you to take the lighter of your two colors. In this case, it's my orange. I'm going to make a circle again, nice sphere with the side of my pastel. And now I want to stipple in. Let's say my light is coming from the top. So I'm kind of helping you with the shadow work at the same time. So if I'm going to stipple in that shadow, the stipple is going to be where? It's not on the top because the light is on the top. Stippling is going to be at the bottom. Stipple means kind of like this. You're hitting the paper, you're making like little dots. I love this technique. I think it adds a lot of great texture to any pastel. Now what I'm going to do here is, because the light's coming on top, let's stipple the top too. And you will see what this will do. This will immediately turn your form, and it'll start to look three-dimensional, which is what it's supposed to do. Okay, so that's the stipple technique. Now we wanted our shadow is going to be where? Exactly at the bottom. because the light is coming from the top. And it's kind of going to go down like that, right? Or you could even make it absolutely accurate and do the semicircle. Okay, so now I want to define that small edge where the sphere touches the surface with another color, a darker color. You could choose even a green and put that in there. Doesn't really matter, because the fact that you're using a complementary color, everything is going to look in harmony. It's going to look harmonious. So you can always add in a third color that is going to slightly alter that perfect harmony, and that's good. That's a good thing, because that additional third color does is bring in a certain definition. And when you need definition in a drawing, it's a great trick. All right, so the last exercise on your worksheet is texture under color. This is really fun. So I want you to start with, let's do it like I have it on the example. So I want you to start with a nice blue. Make a circle, again, on the side, super simple. By the end of this, you all know how to make a circle. Medium pressure. Now on top of that, take your green, medium pressure. This looks really beautiful. What a great color. Now, how am I going to bring up that blue from the back? Well, let's see, you need a tool. Let's see. Well, we could use the Q-tip. Let's see what that does. That doesn't work right. All right, so I'm going to use my fingernail. You may want to use some kind of a object with a point. But when you pull it down, you should be able to see the blue coming up underneath. So this works. This is something that you can use if you need like a really tight defined form and you want to define it even more. You can use this technique. It's not very often used, as you can see, because it's kind of messy, but it does have an effect, and the effect is texture, which is quite nice. So I don't know if we can see that, if everyone can see those kind of fine little lines. That's quite beautiful. Try this with a black. Let's try that with a black background and orange on top. I think it will be more defined. Let's see if I can get that for you quickly. Once again, now of course my orange pastel is going to be really dirty, right? See that? So just wipe it off with a paper towel. And then it's clean. Okay, so that's that technique. Now, let's try it here with the fingernail. Yeah, here we can see the black coming up. This is easier to see. All right, so that's what that is. It's just another technique in your own toolbox for you. That's what that looks like. This is more subtle. If your colors are more subtle, the effect is going to be more subtle. So we've gone over all of the ways you can use pastel. There are many ways. You've reviewed that, you've done your own drawings. So what I would suggest now is that you find a most perfect apple. Here's the one that I found. I was sorely tempted to eat it. It was so perfect. But instead, I chose to draw it. So here's the drawing. Now, I did this on a very dark background so that you could see what can be done with these are called grounds, right? This is this kind of sandpaper ground, it's called, right? Background. And how did I begin this drawing of this perfect apple? Let's see, where's that? Okay, so this is what it looked like, right? So I began this drawing with something that's called negative space. I'm just going to touch on this for a minute. It's a very important artistic concept. And if you can understand it, it will change the way you look at the world. That means that I started on this drawing by drawing everything around the apple. The form around the apple. I did not start with a line, a circle. So I chose colors that inspired me. These colors were not in my studio. Blue, green, purple, it didn't matter. And you can do the same. So you're going to have your apple. What you're going to do is you're going to fill in everything around your principal form. Same thing for the flask, but you don't need to do the flask. You can take another object in your home, of course. But for the first drawing that you're going to do at home, one apple will be more than enough. All right, so you want to fill in everything around the apple. And then using all of these wonderful techniques we learned today, you're going to start to fill in the form. So you see there's light here. I put a little highlight there. There's a shine on the apple that comes in at the very end with a touch of white. There's a little bit of feathering going on there with pulling up the yellow orange from the red background that I have scumbled in. You all know what scumbling is. I blended those colors together, added a little bit of green because if you look closely at the apple, there is some green in there, but you don't have to add the green if you don't want to. And finally, of course, I accentuated this defining line. You could do that with this last technique we did with the texture underneath, or you could just pull in, like I did here, a defining line with a darker color, a darker pastel. Keeping in mind that you do not want to cover the whole round surface with one color. Obviously start in the brighter part, and then you're going to work up toward the lighter colors, because it's very hard to go from a very dark background to light. As we saw in the black exercise, it's impossible to go from that black sphere to something really light. It will not happen because you have to layer all the colors. So you never want to start with all of dark all over and then get to this light. You will never get there. So you're going to start with the darker at the bottom and then pull some of the light down. And then you'll start to do some of the feathering that we did. Try some of the cross-hatching as well. You could also begin the exercise with cross-hatching. See how you do with that. And voila, then you'll have an apple. And then the following exercise you will want to do is add a second apple into the same drawing space. Maybe a little bit behind or right next to it, that's fine. Don't forget to put in your shadow that places the apple on the surface rather than just floating in space. In this case, I chose to use a color. You can also do that, or you can use the neutral, meaning the complementary color, which I did, in fact, the green, which is going to hold that object onto its surface. This flask, this is a piece of glass. This is so simple to do, and this is what a pastel can do that is more difficult to do in painting, because you just draw in I scumbled in the form and then just put the reflecting shadows on top of that, and there it is. You can see already that it's transparent. All right, so this is where you can go on traditional drawing, traditional nature mort, so this is a still life. Also the grandfather of fine art is still life. Or I brought in an example of my work, my contemporary work, and we'll show you that. Just to close, this is where you can go with pastel in a more contemporary vein, because I'm a contemporary artist, so this is what I do. I paint gardens around the world. This particular pastel was done in Italy in Desenzano. And in fact, it comes from a very vague picture taken at Rogers Gardens. And these are hortensia, and I'm looking through the hortensia to all the other plants in the background. So all of this work in the back is some sort of a very diffused and out of focus background. And then, of course, I'm using the movement of the plants, of the vision of the plants, to create this movement in the front. Now, of course, the colors have nothing to do with what the real colors were. And that's the joy of pastel. That's what you can do. You can take any subject and make it any color, and it's completely okay. What you want to think about if you go into this realm is how colors work together. What happens when they meet, when they overlap, as we saw in the blending, when complementaries overlap, or when they don't, when they transition from one. Look at this beautiful transition here, it's very distinct, and then you get something here blended into the light, into the dark. So those are the things that now you know how to do, and you're able to do those. So think about those things when you're working in a more free and contemporary manner, and you can come up with something like this. To conclude, and I want to thank you for joining me on this adventure with pastel, and hope that in the future, outside of the quarantine, that maybe we can have a follow-up class and I could be there hands-on, on-site, and we can work on all of this together.